The Odyssey, Greek mythology explained. Every god, monster, and legend you need to know. Warning: this video contains spoilers for the Odyssey. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey isn't just another historical epic. It's a breathtaking journey into one of the greatest stories ever told, blending mythology, adventure, war, and the complex relationship between humans and the gods. If you walked out of the theater wondering who all these gods, monsters, and legendary characters were, don't worry. In this video, we're going to explain the entire Greek mythology behind the Odyssey, from the Trojan War to the wrath of Poseidon, the legendary monsters Odysseus encounters, and the deeper meaning behind his incredible journey. Let's begin with the man at the center of the story, Odysseus. Odysseus was the legendary king of Ithaca, a small island kingdom in ancient Greece. Unlike warriors such as Achilles, who were famous for their unmatched strength, Odysseus was known for something even more dangerous: his intelligence. He was considered the cleverest of all the Greek kings, a master strategist whose greatest weapon wasn't his sword but his mind. That intelligence ultimately led to one of the most famous military tactics in history, the Trojan horse. The story actually begins before the Odyssey, during the Trojan War, a conflict that lasted 10 years. According to Greek mythology, the war began because the Trojan prince Paris kidnapped, or in some versions, eloped with Helen, the wife of the Spartan king Menelaus. Since Helen was considered the most beautiful woman in the world, her disappearance united the Greek kingdoms against Troy. Thousands of ships sailed across the Aegean Sea, beginning one of mythology's greatest wars. After 10 years of fighting, the Greeks still couldn't breach Troy's massive walls. That's when Odysseus came up with the famous Trojan horse strategy. The Greeks pretended to sail away, leaving behind a gigantic wooden horse as what appeared to be a peace offering. Hidden inside the horse were elite Greek soldiers. Believing they had won the war, the Trojans pulled the horse into their city. That night, the hidden soldiers emerged, opened the gates for the returning Greek army, and Troy fell. While the plan won the war, it also changed Odysseus' life forever. In many modern interpretations, including Christopher Nolan's version, the destruction of Troy becomes the emotional burden that haunts him throughout his journey home. But returning home wasn't going to be easy because one of the most powerful gods in Greek mythology became his enemy. That god was Poseidon, the ruler of the seas. Poseidon wasn't angry because of the Trojan War itself. His hatred began after Odysseus encountered the terrifying Cyclops Polyphemus. The Cyclopes were giant one-eyed creatures, and Polyphemus happened to be Poseidon's son. When Odysseus and his men became trapped inside the Cyclops cave, they couldn't overpower the giant through brute force. Instead, Odysseus once again relied on his intelligence. He tricked Polyphemus into drinking wine, told him his name was Nobody, and then blinded him by driving a sharpened wooden stake into his single eye. As the Cyclops cried out for help, he shouted that nobody had attacked him, causing the other Cyclopes to ignore his cries. It was one of Odysseus' greatest escapes, but it came at a terrible cost. Before leaving, Odysseus proudly revealed his real name. That single act of pride allowed Polyphemus to pray to Poseidon for revenge. From that moment onward, Poseidon unleashed storms, shipwrecks, and endless obstacles, determined to make sure Odysseus would never reach Ithaca alive. In Greek mythology, this is one of the greatest examples of hubris, the dangerous arrogance that often brings about a hero's downfall. Although Poseidon opposed him, another goddess secretly protected Odysseus throughout much of his journey: Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and warfare. Athena admired Odysseus because he valued intelligence over brute strength. Again and again, she guided him, inspired him, and intervened on his behalf. Her support represents one of the central themes of Greek mythology. Wisdom ultimately triumphs over raw power. As Odysseus sails across the Mediterranean, he encounters creatures that have become legendary. One of the most famous is Circe, the powerful enchantress who lives on the island of Aiaia. Circe possesses magical abilities capable of transforming men into animals. She turns many of Odysseus' crew into pigs. With the help of the god Hermes, who provides him with a magical herb called moly, Odysseus resists her spell. Rather than remaining enemies, the two eventually form an uneasy alliance, and Odysseus and his crew stay on her island for an entire year before continuing their voyage. Next come the terrifying Sirens. Unlike the beautiful mermaids often depicted in modern movies, the Sirens in Greek mythology were deadly creatures whose enchanting songs lured sailors toward rocky coastlines, where their ships would be destroyed. Curious to hear their irresistible music without dying, Odysseus ordered his crew to plug their ears with beeswax while tying him tightly to the ship's mast. As the Sirens sang, Odysseus begged his men to release him, but they ignored his pleas until the danger had passed. This episode symbolizes humanity's struggle against temptation and the importance of self-control. The dangers continue with Scylla and Charybdis, perhaps the most terrifying sea monsters in Greek mythology. Scylla was a six-headed monster living in a cliffside cave, while Charybdis created enormous whirlpools capable of swallowing entire ships. Odysseus had to make an impossible choice: sail closer to Scylla and lose a few sailors, or risk Charybdis and lose everyone. He chose the lesser of two evils. This moment gave rise to the famous expression "between Scylla and Charybdis," meaning being trapped between two equally terrible options. Another unforgettable figure is Calypso, the immortal nymph who rescues Odysseus after a devastating shipwreck. She falls deeply in love with him and keeps him on her isolated island of Ogygia for several years, offering him eternal life if he stays. Yet despite immortality, luxury, and safety, Odysseus refuses. His greatest desire has never been eternal youth or limitless power. It has always been to return home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. Eventually, the gods order Calypso to let him go, reminding us that destiny cannot be delayed forever. Throughout these adventures, another important idea runs through Greek mythology. The gods constantly influence human lives, but humans are still responsible for their own choices. Odysseus survives because of his intelligence, courage, and determination, but he also suffers because of his pride, impatience, and occasional poor decisions. Greek myths rarely portray heroes as perfect. Instead, they remind us that even the greatest individuals are deeply flawed. Back in Ithaca, Odysseus faces one final challenge. During his 20-year absence, more than 100 arrogant suitors have invaded his palace, believing he is dead. They pressure Penelope to choose a new husband while consuming the kingdom's wealth. To expose them, Odysseus disguises himself as an old beggar. Only after proving his identity by stringing his legendary bow of feet none of the suitors can accomplish does he reveal who he truly is. Together with his son Telemachus, he defeats the suitors and reclaims his kingdom. But Christopher Nolan's adaptation gives this ending an entirely new emotional dimension. Rather than simply celebrating victory, Nolan explores the lasting psychological scars of war. Odysseus realizes that although he has finally returned home, he can never become the man he was before Troy. The journey isn't just about defeating monsters or surviving impossible odds. It's about confronting guilt, accepting loss, and discovering what true peace really means. That is why the Odyssey has endured for nearly 3,000 years. It's far more than a story about monsters, gods, and mythical adventures. It's about resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship. It's about resisting temptation, overcoming pride, valuing wisdom over violence, and understanding that the greatest battles are often fought within ourselves. Even today, the word Odyssey has become part of everyday language. When someone describes a long, difficult, life-changing journey as an odyssey, they're referring to this very story, a journey filled with danger, growth, sacrifice, and ultimately self-discovery. Christopher Nolan's film captures that timeless spirit while presenting Greek mythology on an epic cinematic scale. Whether you're fascinated by the gods, thrilled by the legendary monsters, or moved by Odysseus' emotional journey, The Odyssey reminds us why these ancient myths continue to inspire audiences thousands of years after they were first written. So, which mythical creature fascinated you the most? Was it the terrifying Cyclops, the enchanting Sirens, the deadly Scylla, the mysterious Calypso, or the mighty Poseidon himself? Let me know your favorite piece of Greek mythology in the comments below. If you enjoyed this mythology breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more The Odyssey explained videos, Greek mythology deep dives, movie breakdowns, and Christopher Nolan analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.